Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Friend Show. I'm your host, Nicholas Lorimer, and today I am joined by Mr. Sholan Booysen. Sholan, how are you?
I'm good. In yourself, Nick?
I'm pretty good. A bit sleep deprived, but that's entirely my own fault because I got distracted and didn't go to bed on time. And of course, we are also joined by Mr. Hermann Pretorius. Hermann, how are you, sir?
Hi, I'm good. I'm curious about what distracted you, though.
I was just reading various articles and scrolling Twitter. Nothing.
It is awful.
Lightning.
It is awful when you read something and the next moment it's morning. It just time has no right to behave so inappropriately.
It's that horrible moment when I looked at the clock and saw it was 2:15. Anyway,
or when you think, why are the birds starting to sing at 11:30?
Yeah, that's so strange. All right, so we're going to start off with our first story for today, and this is a thing that's kind of been a little bit touched on in the national media, but I don't think there's been a huge amount of coverage of it, at least in the sort of very serious mainstream press. And this is rumors circulating on social media about a national shutdown. These rumors are so widespread that the National Joint Operational and Intelligence Structures, NatJointus, yes, I think it is, which is a bit of an unwieldy acronym, but anyway, says that it is aware of these rumors that there's going to be a national shutdown of the country's roads going ahead tomorrow. These rumors going around on WhatsApp and on social media have said basically that several large unions and the big taxi organization Santco are planning to shut down all of the roads in the country as part of a protest against high fuel prices and cost of living and that kind of stuff. However, the organizations that are named as perhaps being behind this shutdown have all denied that they are going to be involved in this. They say they have nothing to do with it. This is just rubbish. It's a rumor. It's got nothing to do with them. And so I think there's a number of interesting things to talk about here. Firstly, whether we think anything will actually go ahead tomorrow, who knows? Secondly, why would someone spread these rumors? And thirdly, why would so many people believe them? So Sholan, you've followed them a little bit on social media. I think you've been and you were talking about this. What do you make of this story?
Yeah, no, so totally. I understand some of the reasonings why people suspect that this may take place, because I mean, I know South Africa is going through an extremely tough time. I think that's an understatement. And, we have things like record unemployment, petrol prices are going up, cost of living is so difficult. And we have a government that's completely corrupt, and, it's making it difficult making things go happen in this country. But I do, however, think that things like this national shutdown tend to be very self-destructive at times, because, I mean, things are going tough. People have a right to be frustrated, but all too easily this frustration can sometimes lead to, aggression and sometimes violence that we see playing out in this country. I mean, not too long ago, we had the KZN riots and we saw how that played out. And it was completely terrible. Our services, the NATS joints that you were referring to, they were absolutely incapable of suppressing or, preventing major destruction of taking place. And eventually, the most thing that usually gets harmed the most is infrastructure in this country. And I mean, we already have such a slow functioning or slow response to developing our infrastructure or even repairing it, to be intentionally damaging it because you are frustrated with the very government is so it's a very weird situation, frame of mind for somebody to be in, because then that thing in your moment of frustration that you just decide, okay, we're going protesting and we're breaking down infrastructure that took an hour to break down, that with the government that we have, bruh, it will probably take like 10 years for it to get back to its original state, or for it even to be improved, if that even ever takes place. So yeah, there is definitely an aspect of self-responsibility. However, I will say the reasonings behind it is rather legitimate, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. A lot of municipalities and government, everyone from Fikile Mbulula to Mpopalatse, the DA mayor of Joburg, have talked about the massive infrastructure backlog in the country. And every time we have something, even on a small scale, like a riot or any kind of destruction, it just sets that goal of fixing that further back. Herman, what do you make of this? It's kind of strange. I suspect that there won't be anything. Maybe there'll be some isolated trouble spots here and there, but that's fairly typical for South Africa. What do you make of this whole story?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, if you look at the search analytics of the topics in the last day or two that have really dominated, the national shutdown is sort of fourth or fifth. For some context, yesterday it was fourth. It was outperformed by Kanye West, Bongani Zungu, and then, of course, the pressing national issue of Belgium versus Poland. So I must say, if we...
I'm glad that Kanye is managing to stay in the news.
Yes. I mean, it's well done. Whatever he seems to be doing, he seems to be doing well. But the question here is of course, is this a national conversation? Is this something a very real risk? And I think Sholan is quite right. The reasons for frustration are deep-seated and legitimate. You have 10 years of economic stagnation. You have the cost of living crisis. You can call it inflation, but it's really just a cost of living crisis engulfing the world and really spreading chaos. And it usually hurts the poorest most. The people usually affected by this inflation crisis is firstly the poorest people, because the most basic services are affected in terms of the rise of transport costs, the rise of wheat. The cost of wheat is now, of course, especially great, with over the last few months seeing a 30% increase in the cost of wheat per tonnage. So that's quite problematic. So the reasons are deep-seated, and they are not significantly different from the July riots. However, I really don't think that we will see too much of a coordinated problem. I think there will, of course, be some incidents, but there just doesn't seem to be enough chatter about this. And
without a major organization backing this, it seems kind of difficult to imagine.
Yes, and what we should realize that what really gave the July riots a momentum was some political impetus. There was a political motivation, a destabilization objective, if you want, that gave rise to the opportunity for this natural frustration to come to the fore. And you don't see that now. You don't see that level of threats, and the threats at the level which they are quite low level. I mean, you get these WhatsApp messages, but if you sort of register where the levels of organizational competence and organizational ability lies for national type of things, the people who can really affect this aren't saying much, or are rejecting it outright as a possibility. So I don't think it's something to really entertain. Of course, you will have these isolated incidents, but that we will call, just a day in South Africa.
Well, I sincerely hope that we don't come on Monday's show to talk about the weekend of chaos. That's just insane.
Yes, just to talk about where Johannesburg used to be. That would be a problem. But I just don't see this appetite happening. In fact, it might cost more for people to reach these places of frustration than they have in the first place.
Sholan, any final thoughts?
No, I absolutely just agree with HB on that. That I really hope it doesn't actually, spiral out of control and it reaches the level that we saw in KZN. So yeah, that's about it from me.
But do you guys know what is the situation with Belgium versus Poland?
I presume it was a football match, but
fair enough.
Yeah.
Unless there's another war in Europe brewing that we aren't privy to.
The Belgians versus the Poles, those warmongers, those bloody warmongers, with their victim mentality and their saxophones.
All right, let's go on to our next story. And this is sort of the ongoing drama around President Cyril Ramaphosa. So President Ramaphosa has been accused by former corrections commissioner and intelligence official or intelligence head Arthur Fraser of covering up a crime of theft from Ramaphosa's farm, amounting to $4 million US. Allegedly, the thieves, at least one of them is supposed to be the alleged thieves. One of them is Namibian, and apparently they left for Namibia in 2020. And according to some sources in Namibia that the anti-corruption group Ambabungane talked to, South African intelligence channels were used to get the Namibians to let the matter go, purportedly to protect Ramaphosa. And what still doesn't entirely make sense to me is why Mr. Ramaphosa would want to cover up a crime committed against himself. It's very strange. Maybe I just haven't read the story's details properly enough. But anyway, while many have attacked him, particularly the opposition and some of the, shall we say, Zuma faction of the ANC, a lot of senior ANC people have come to his defense. Gwede Mantashe this morning said the president is being persecuted for being a victim of crime. Deputy President David Mabuza was answering questions in Parliament yesterday, and he said there's no need for Cyril Ramaphosa to step down. He said, quote, "I don't think we've reached that point. I don't think we have reached any point that seeks to say the president must step down." MPs from a lot of different parties, the DA, the EFF and such, all inquired whether Ramaphosa, now facing criminal charges that at least seem to have on the surface a bit of merit to them, should at least consider stepping down in order to serve the interests of the country. Apparently, according to investigative journalists, no case of theft has been registered with the police in the 2 years since the burglary, which suggests that there might at least be some, on the face of it, evidence that Ramaphosa may have done something incorrect here. Let me start with you, Herman. What do you make of all this?
Well, I think the real question here is what's Ramaphosa doing with $4 million in the first place? That's sort of the problem here. If you were to come into my house and you just find 48 kilograms of narwhal horn, that would be relatively problematic. I don't have 48 kilos of narwhal horn. It's close to 42. But the point is that the question isn't, oh, you were burgled, that's awful. The question is, you were burgled of something that you weren't supposed to have in the first place. It's slightly odd. So I think that's really the sort of the uncomfortable point here. And then also, of course, there's the possibility that large quantities of foreign donations can only stay in your private ownership and possession for a certain amount of time before it has to be declared. So there are these sort of complication things. Firstly, why have millions of money in cash put under a mattress,
or on a couch?
Or on a couch, stashed. I really struggled over that. And then number two is, why have it in foreign currency? And number three, why not report it? Now, these are not yet established facts. They ring true, they sound credible, but the problem is any allegation of impropriety or financial misdoings by an ANC cadre sounds plausible. So we really have the challenge here of plausibility. However, that being said, traditional media sources that have been loyal to Cyril are starting to twitch rather uncomfortably. Yeah. So he should worry about that. Now, the media doesn't have wonderful cut through in South Africa, but Cyril Ramaphosa's reputation has largely been based on just the unquestioning media endorsement and support that he's gotten ever since not being Jacob Zuma. So those are some of the complicating factors there. That said, rumors are now starting to drip out from Cyril's team and Cyril's people behind the scenes. The word is that he will stay put for now, that there's no plans for him to go now, but that if an agency with some integrity acts against him, that he would have no other choice but to resign. And if that does not happen, he will lead his party into the 2024 elections, and if it falls significantly below a majority, he is likely to go and not stick around for ANC and coalition talks. So that's very, very interesting. Even if Ramaphosa's own people behind the scenes are starting to acknowledge that there might be some circumstances where this chain of events culminates in his removal from office, that is significant. That is something quite significant. But it is also very, very interesting. And David Mabuza is a slippery character. He's turned out to be less slippery than I'd hoped. I would have admired him more. It seems to me at this stage that his reputation of being, the sneaky cat, is undeserved. He has completely disappeared from cunning relevance. But even he should know, being a relatively cunning manipulator, that if you deny something in Parliament, that's the best way to feed the flames. It sort of reminds me of the little boy, going on the farm, playing around, and then coming back to his mum near the farmhouse to say, no, we didn't kill the chicks. No, the chicks were dead when we got there. It's like that denial is oddly specific. And it also reminds of the apartheid government, I think in 1972, with the Prince Edward Island incident, when meteorological equipment picked up odd seismic activity around the islands before anyone had even suspected nuclear activity. There was chatter in the global intelligence circles of South Africa just going, no, we did not test a nuclear weapon near the Prince. We did not. There was before anyone had even said this. So the denial by Mabuza in and of itself does make one a bit suspicious. Is this the end of Cyril Ramaphosa? Not yet. Could this be the end? Yes, but then someone other than Busisiwe Mkhwebane must take steps against him. If not, we will see Ramaphosa probably winning in December and taking his party into 2024.
So we did talk about this a little bit earlier in the week, but the rumors that Cyril's about to be pushed out, or that this is the end of this is the return of the state capture crowd, as one commentator called it, are circulating very fiercely on social media and in sort of the commentary circles, discussion pages. But that really seems like a bit of a dead end for the ANC, because, as we've said many times, Cyril remains the most popular politician in the country, and without him, the ANC will be in big trouble. Sholan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I definitely don't see, this might be a bit unpopular, but I don't really see any reason for Cyril to step down yet, because I definitely think that our sometimes incompetent law enforcement entities should definitely investigate as necessary and proceed, but due process should take place first. And yeah, if these allegations turn out to be true. But then I also have another question: is what happens once Cyril is removed? Do we really see a more productive South Africa with the likes of Mabuza or Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma in president? I'm no Cyril supporter, but I'm fairly certain that things will go downhill even faster if he's not in place. And I mean that he is he is certainly the most popular politician in South Africa. That's true. And I think he's the only one keeping the ANC afloat right now. And I mean, with him as captain, they're still sinking. So anybody else other than Cyril, things are just going to rapidly snowball faster down the hill.
I must say, I think that's a bit of a simplistic take. I don't quite agree with it. I think firstly, I don't think Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma is a real runner. Should Cyril fall on his sword now?
No, but Lindiwe Sisulu has been proposed as one, and I think this is a problem. I think Sholan's exactly right. The ANC it's got a shallow bench. It's got these same characters all over the place, and it's got no one with popularity, no one who's got an unblemished record, really, who's in any sort of senior position of the party.
I will dispute that point in a moment, but let me dispute other points first. Number one is I don't accept that it is necessarily a disaster if anyone but Cyril leads the ANC. I think someone like David Mabuza might in fact be an improvement for the country. He is a ruthless pragmatist, and ruthless pragmatists understand that if there's an economy you want to loot, there must be an economy in the first place. And someone like David Mabuza or someone like Zweli Mkhize might understand that point better, that, for your patronage network to function, there must be an economic engine behind it. So what's the minimum amount of corruption we can afford to get the economy going, but still feed the party patronage network? That isn't an impossible consideration for a ruthless ANC pragmatist to carry out.
Sure, but is there much evidence? Yeah, is there much evidence that David Mabuza is that person?
Well, no, but he very well might be. And from conversations with people who know Mabuza, he is certainly closer to that than Ramaphosa. So that's the first thing. The second thing is Ramaphosa's popularity in terms of his ability to govern the country is neither here nor there. And I am still slightly regretful to this day that Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma did not win at Nasrec 2017, because the policy program between Ramaphosa and Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma you can't differentiate between the two. But so Ramaphosa, with his business background and his well-spokenness and his demeanor and his cupcake reputation, he's like the plaster over the cancerous tumor. Where Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma,
I agree on that point.
I think the sky is falling in.
I think really that there isn't much disagreement here. The question is who would be best for the ANC in terms of its electoral prospects, and who would be best for the country.
Yes,
and I think
I have a theory that the ANC has a secret weapon in a politician that it is positioning to lead it. I think at least the Cyril faction is positioning to lead this person to succeed Cyril and to lead it into the future. And I think this person, she would be incredibly efficient and dangerous to the country, and that is Mamaloko Kubai, the previous Minister of Tourism, and now I think the Minister of Human Development. She is the head of the ANC's economic subcommittee. She is eerily ideological. She has battle scars in ANC racist policy. And as far as corruption goes, she is relatively blemish-free. So we shouldn't be too quick to discount the ANC in terms of its bench. It doesn't have much of a bench, but I think we have to acknowledge that it has a bench. Ronald Lamola is there, Kubai is there, and those two, between them.
You see, I think what's lacking here is national profile, and that I think really does hurt. But
remember,
I see your point.
If you think about Godongwana, now the Minister of Finance, 2 years ago, no one knew who he was. He didn't.
No, right. So he has a profile now.
Yes,
but he didn't. He didn't 2 years
exactly.
ago.
So, but such a profile can be attained relatively easily.
So just before I go for final thoughts to you, Sholan, I want to make the snide comment that the Germans were very keen on wonder weapons, super weapons, secret weapons in the Second World War, and as it turned out, I suspect it will be the same here. That it will be a lot of too little, too late. Sholan, any final thoughts?
No, I know that we've been discussing rather, who's more the ANC leadership. But one thing that I do think we should find encouraging is that whoever is going to lead the ANC in the coming years, in its near future, well, we hope that it will be their last. And that's the person who will probably be, putting the ANC into the casket politically in this case. And that we won't have to be concerned about ANC leadership positions any longer. But yeah, so definitely if Ramaphosa goes, ANC is definitely going down in 2024. I think we can be certain about that.
I do need to push back on that, because while I agree in the main, we shouldn't be so fast to write it off. The death of the ANC in the Western Cape was not a quick thing. It wobbled, it limped before it fell. And something that we shouldn't discount is that 2024 hits, the ANC loses its majority, The EFF refuses to go into it into government coalition. You get a minority coalition government with too little political capital and effectual power to bring any fundamental reform. The paralysis makes the country worse, and whereby the ANC limps back into power in 2029. That's not an impossible scenario.
I think that's not impossible, but I do think the probability that it would be some newer version of the ANC plus the EFF rather than the ANC as we know it. I do agree with Sholan here that it'll be in a lot of trouble in 2024. Anyway, we've gone long on this one, so very briefly, just to wrap up, let's start with you, Hermann. Boris Johnson, Prime Minister of the UK, has recently faced a vote of no confidence in himself from his own MPs in the Conservative Party, and he won the vote, 211 for keeping him in his position, with 148 against. Boris Johnson himself said that this was a good result and he's very happy with it. And now, he's protected, I think, by the rules from being voted out by his own caucus for a year. And so we can put this all behind us now and move on. And that's the end of the story. What do you make of all this, Hermann?
Well, the problem with British politics, and one of the reasons why it works, is it's essentially by the good chap rules. Be a good chap and resign. Be a good chap and become prime minister. It's very much based on the idea. And just a comment for Zarko here: the ANC can come back. It absolutely can come back, according to our analysis. I'm not likely to, but that doesn't mean it's an impossible scenario. So back to Boris Johnson. The problem with Johnson is that in the Tory party has a very pragmatic and transactional relationship with its leadership. If it thinks you lead well and you're an election winner, it tolerates you to lead it. If you don't, you sort of get chopped. That's what happened to every single Conservative Party leader, at least since Edward Heath and definitely since Thatcher. So what happened now is that while Boris Johnson won the vote of no confidence, or the confidence motion in him, he won it by a disappointingly small margin. In the UK, you've got the so-called government payroll. Now, the government payroll, or the government, it doesn't consist just of the front bench, the so-called cabinet and cabinet members. There are personal private secretaries, sub-secretaries, deputy ministers. There's a whole slew of governmental positions that need to be filled by members of the House of Commons that are sub-parliament level. And that amounts to about 180. So traditionally, you talk about the government payroll vote as 180 MPs. Now, if you take into account that the Conservatives have 359 seats in the House of Commons, and you subtract 180 from the victory of 211, then you are essentially left with what's that 31 MPs are not who voted for Johnson, who are not members of the government, while 148 MPs of the backbenchers voted against him. If you go on the support of the backbenchers alone, not people in the pay of the government, then you actually sit with a massive problem where the majority of backbenchers no longer support you as prime minister. Johnson's team was briefing ahead of the vote that anything below 120 or 100 even would let the prime minister go on. And while the rebels anticipated they would get support of 150, that was dismissed by many of the pro-Johnson MPs to say, no, that's just unhealthy inflation of the numbers. Turns out it wasn't. And it is worth remembering that Theresa May, 6 months before she resigned as prime minister, had a motion of confidence against her in which she carried 63% of the party. And yet 6 months later, she had to resign under party pressure. Boris Johnson carried 58% of the party, a smaller margin than Theresa May. He really has a massive problem in terms of getting his backbenchers under control. And a last point, this isn't a particular issue that he can address and turn around. For Margaret Thatcher, it was the poll tax. For John Major, it was Europe. For Theresa May, it was Brexit. All of these prime ministers, in response to a confidence vote, could use a single policy change to shore up their support. Johnson isn't in that position. It's not a policy change that he can bring, it's him. He needs to stop being him for the party to favor him. This isn't an attack from a specific political objective. We oppose policy X, Prime Minister, therefore we vote against you. This is policy, this is Prime Minister, we no longer trust you, and nor do the people. So I very much think Boris Johnson, if conventional wisdom holds, is on borrowed time.
So, Sholan, we don't have a lot of time left. We've only got about 30 seconds or so, but any thoughts you have to add to what Hermann is saying about the UK?
Yeah, HB brilliantly laid out the factuals there as it is. I will say I was not really surprised that Boris did so badly, because still to this day, I'm very much struggling to understand really Boris as a leader. I'm really not clear on, you know what, his his policies, his actions, what are the principles that he actually stands on as a leader. So I'm not surprised that people in his own party don't even have that much confidence in him. I would just want to ask one last question to HB, and who it is that he thinks should actually replace Boris as Prime Minister.
Well, that's very, very briefly. I think that's why Boris will limp on for a few months. There isn't a consensus candidate. Until recently, Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, was flying so high in the opinion polls of his party members that he was the natural successor. But his star has since been tarnished by, a mismanaged budgetary situation and some personal scandals regarding his wife's citizenship and non-domicile status. So there isn't a clear successor, but the runners and riders are Jeremy Hunt, former Defence Secretary and Health Secretary, Liz Truss, Foreign Secretary, Rishi Sunak, Chancellor of the Exchequer, Ben Wallace, Defence Secretary, Nadeem Zahawi, Education Secretary, and possibly Penny Mordaunt, the Minister for International Trade. Those are the runners and riders. If one of them can come out and unite the party behind them, Boris is toast.
Yeah.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for listening. We will see you next week on the Daily Friends Show. Have a great weekend, everyone. Cheers.